Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metropolis Radio, and today we are talking about retro gaming, maybe a little bit of emulation, and why I decided to emulate a lot of shit. And that is because this article came out, and I largely agree with it. Why Nintendo Switch is the absolute worst choice for retro game fans. Soon, PlayStation will join Xbox in supporting legacy console games digitally purchased through older hardware, leaving Nintendo Switch as an outlier. Though it may seem counterintuitive to some, the Nintendo Switch is in many ways the worst choice for gamers who value prior generation games, as both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X/S have backwards compatibility and honor digital purchases made through legacy platforms on current hardware. When the Switch launched, it broke Nintendo's consumer-friendly streak of maintaining one generation of backwards compatibility. The Switch only plays games made for the Switch and does not support even virtual console purchases made through the 3DS, Wii, or Wii U. Now, okay. Now, to be fair if I have to weigh in on something that, I'm not going to decry intellectual dishonesty here, but when they talk about that, it broke Nintendo's consumer-friendly streak of maintaining one generation of backwards compatibility. That did not start until the launch of the Wii. When the Wii came out, you could actually play your GameCube games, and I believe the later iteration of the Wii, I think like the Wii Slim took that out. But then obviously when the Wii U came out, it was backwards compatible with your Wii games. I don't know about GameCube, so I don't know about that. But again, to be fair, It actually did not no, I apologize. It actually goes back a lot further. It actually goes back to their handheld days, right? The Game Boy Color could play original Game Boy games. The Game Boy Advance came out. It could play both Game Boy Color and Game Boy games. When the Nintendo DS came out, the early versions of that game, I believe up until the DSi, you could play Nintendo DS games, Game Boy Advance games, because there was the Game Boy Advance slot on the bottom of the DS. I did have a DSi that actually had that. So you could play Nintendo DS, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy games on one handheld. Then the 3DS came out, and it was backwards compatible with Nintendo DS games. So, okay, so even I flubbered a bit, but still, if you're talking about the home console providing backwards compatibility, that didn't start until the Wii, but the handhelds have been doing it since the Game Boy Color. Here we go. Both the PS5 and Xbox Series X/S consoles fairly nearly complete backwards compatibility with their direct predecessors. Based on announcements made alongside the newly revamped PlayStation Plus, Sony's gaming ecosystem will also follow Microsoft's lead in another important way. Players who purchase select original PlayStation and PlayStation Portable games through PSN will have access to those games on current hardware soon, while Nintendo's legacy console games remain locked behind the Switch Online subscription service. So any of you guys that bought any of those like WiiWare games, those games that only came out through the Nintendo Wii shop at the time. I think there was like a Castlevania game that only released through that. Well, if you didn't download it in time, by the time that Nintendo shut down the Wii shop, they basically stuck up their middle finger and went, sucks to be you, bitch. Here we go. Nintendo's announcement of the 3DS and Wii U store closures hurts access and preservation, certainly, but it also damages consumer trust. For gamers who argue the merits of digital purchases against physical games, physical game advocates are quick to point out that access to digital titles is contingent on the companies maintaining their storefronts. Even I've made this point over the years. In the case of Nintendo, Switch Online has been presented as the successor to the Virtual Console, which houses a multitude of retro games. A Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis game purchased through the Wii U's Virtual Console could absolutely play on the Switch, as Switch Online proves the console is fully capable of such emulation. But Nintendo chooses not to provide this support. And here's the first dividing point of this article, is that Switch gamers' prior gen digital buys are not supported, unlike competitors. Nintendo has opted against honoring those digital purchases on its current hardware by choice rather than necessity, which erodes consumer trust in its gaming ecosystem. Yes, and here's my grand opinion on this. And I have bought digital games through the Nintendo Switch eShop just because they were insanely fucking cheap to get. I think I got classic Doom 1993, Doom 2, Doom 3, and Doom 64. I think I got all 4 of those digital files for like $5. So for $5, it was well worth it. But here's my thing, and like, and if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I put up, I put up gameplay footage. Some of it is from, some of it is more current games on PS4, but there's also some that I'm emulating. Hell, I'm probably having gameplay footage from one of those emulated games. And here's the thing that I've always maintained. I don't have an issue paying for content. My issue comes from the fact that some companies, not all, but some companies expect me and you to pay for the same piece of content over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's where I fucking draw the line. Of like, some of these games that I emulate, I did own legitimate copies back in the day, and a lot of these games have never been re-released, even on digital storefronts. So who the fuck am I harming by emulating these games? And also, when you're buying these digital games, whether it be from the Xbox store, PlayStation store, or Nintendo eShop, keep in mind, the only thing that you're doing is you're buying an ISO file. Most times they are not going back and doing anything else with it other than, like on PlayStation Store or on the Xbox. Oh, we've added achievement and trophy support for these games. My opinion on that is big motherfucking deal. You're still releasing an ISO file of a game that came out in 2002 and not doing anything to justify the $14.99 price tag on some of these games, when all you're doing is just re-releasing the ISO file and loading it up through your own proprietary emulator. Sorry, not sorry. I'm gonna fucking emulate the games on my own fucking emulator. Since midway through the prior generation of Xbox, the Xbox One pushed hard for backwards compatibility and support digitally purchased original Xbox and Xbox 360 games that were part of the console's backwards compatibility list, a feature it shares with the Xbox Series X/S consoles. Well, no shit. The reason why they had to do that was because Microsoft, with the Xbox One, pissed so many fucking people off with trying to put the used game DRM on it that, Sony had that legendary, 30-second ad that is, how to share your games on PS4. Step 1, it was buy the game, and then step 2, you saw, what was his fucking name? I can't remember the head of Sony Japan at the time. I can't remember his name. Someone will probably correct me in the comments below, but he just handed it to the guy next to him, and it's like, and how to share your PS4 game. Step 1, buy the game. Step 2, hand the game to your buddy, and that was it. So the Xbox One pushing hard for backwards compatibility, I would argue, was out of necessity and not by choice, because they needed something to win people back over after pushing so fucking hard with the used game DRM. Yeah, thanks, Don Matrick. Sony took a similar approach to the Switch with the PS4, which also lacked any form of backward compatibility. The new PlayStation Plus initiative promises to mend fences somewhat. Many classic original PlayStation games are coming to PS Plus alongside PS2 and PSP titles. But the question is going to be, how much money are they going to want for these ISO files? As I brought up, there were some PlayStation 2 games that they re-released for PlayStation 4 that they wanted $14.99 for, despite the fact that they're not going back and doing anything new to the games. They're just releasing the ISO file. I guess if you want to sleep better at night going, hey, I at least bought a quote-unquote legitimate copy of the game, which if you're one of those people, good for you, I don't care. But me, I am just fine going out and emulating these games myself. For gamers who have supported Sony's consoles over multiple generations, the most exciting announcement was buried alongside the list of some of the legacy games coming to the service in the coming months. A recent PlayStation blog notes, quote, also, players who have previously purchased the digital version of select games from the original PlayStation and PSP generations will not have to make a separate purchase or sign up to PlayStation Plus to play these titles on PS4 or PS5. This will put PlayStation on similar footing with Xbox regarding the handling of prior-gen digital purchases, A backward-compatible original Xbox game like Psychonauts can be played through Game Pass or without the subscription for those who have purchased the game previously. Meanwhile, a Switch user who purchased a retro game like the NES's Super Mario Bros. To the Wii U Virtual Console still needs to subscribe to Switch Online to play that game on current hardware. And that leads to the second and final point that this article splits on, and that is Nintendo devalues trust in its ecosystem, unlike Xbox and PlayStation. Although Switch Online is better in Japan, with a more robust game selection, adding more games to the service does nothing to address the issue of legacy ownership for those who invest in virtual console games. The concept of game ownership is complex with modern consoles, with physical discs serving as validation keys rather than actual games for the most part. Digital purchases have the advantage of convenience and are less wasteful than physical media, but companies need to build trust if they truly want digital purchases to be less suspect for consumers. Oh yeah, how many times have you guys ever bought a game and it was just pulled from the Nintendo eShop, Xbox store, or PlayStation store for no fucking reason? I mean, hell, I knew someone who purchased the first season of Game of Thrones through iTunes, and then one day it was just arbitrarily removed from purchase from the iTunes store, so they purged it from his library. It didn't matter that he had acquired Game of Thrones Season 1 legitimately. The fact that it was pulled from the storefront for sale meant that he could no longer access it despite paying for said access, which is why I have never went all in on digital myself, to be 100% honest. And I've always said, if gaming goes 100% digital, that's when I get out of gaming and I become, PC emulation bro, way fucking more than I am right now. An assurance that digital purchase on today's hardware can likely be accessed on the inevitable next generation consoles makes digital purchases a safer investment for gamers. Xbox has taken steps over the past generation to build that trust, and by honoring select prior gen digital purchases, PlayStation is working to rebuild consumer trust. This leaves Nintendo as the sole outlier whose digitally purchased games have no expectation of support on any hardware other than the one they were originally purchased for, making the Nintendo Switch the worst choice for retro gaming fans. And this is why I'm saying, guys, piracy should always be an option when it comes down to this, especially if you bought a lot of these games digitally. Like I said earlier, I don't have a problem paying for content, especially if it's content that I legitimately want. What I personally despise, when some companies do this, some companies, not all companies do this, is they expect you to pay for the exact same piece of content over and over and over and over again. And it's like, no, enough. I'm tired of your fucking greed. In fact, go back and look at what Nintendo did with the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection. My God, that was an absolute bumblefuck. They did nothing to enhance the games, despite the fact that modders got Super Mario 64 to run in 60 frames a second and have widescreen support, and they even fixed the goddamn camera, yet Nintendo couldn't even be bothered to do that. Now, some people will make the argument, oh, but what if I want to play the game as it was originally intended? That's perfectly fine, and Nintendo should always give that option for people. If you want to play the original Mario 64, without all the new bells and whistles, because the new Medieval game did that. When they went back and they remade Medieval from the ground up, one of the things you can unlock in the Medieval remake from, I believe it was 2019, was the original PlayStation 1 game in its unaltered form. So yes, I am all for give people that option. But if you're going to release this collection of games and you're not even going to be bothered to go back and basically make a patch to put Super Mario 64 in widescreen and have it run in 60 frames a second, despite the fact that modders have been doing that for years and years and years, my opinion, go fuck yourself. And on top of that, you want me to purchase games digitally, but then the second you release a new console, I have to re-buy those games again? Nintendo, fuck off. And guys, that's pretty much all I got for you. If you stuck around this long, thanks so much for doing so. And if you've been following along, if you know I'm terrible at ending these videos, so I will just see you guys next time.